Welcome, and thank you for joining the Q&A for Boy States. I'm Gwen Diglis, Deputy Director for the American Cinematheque. Please visit our website, americancinematheque.com, where you can find information about our upcoming programs and how you can support the American Cinematheque by becoming a member and making a donation. I would like to thank Apple Original Films for this Q&A with filmmakers Amanda McBaine and Jesse Moss, and students Stephen Garza and René Otero. Moderating today is Pod Save America host, John Favreau. Enjoy.
Thank you, everyone. I'm John Favreau, host of a podcast called Pod Save America. Before that, I was Barack Obama's chief speechwriter for 8 years. I will gladly go back into speechwriting when Stephen and Renee run for office. I'm ready to volunteer if you guys need it. I am really honored to be here tonight in conversation with you all. I'm a huge fan. Boy State is one of my favorite films. And tonight we are here with the directors of the film, Amanda McBaine and Jesse Moss, and two of the stars, Stephen Garza and René Otero. Welcome. Amanda and Jesse, I wanted to start with you guys. What drew you to Boy State, Texas? And going into it, to what extent did you expect to see parallels between the program and the national political climate?
Yeah, well, thank you, John, for moderating the conversation, and thank you, American Cinematheque. We really wanted to explore political polarization in our country, and the spark for Texas Boy State was reading about the program in the Washington Post in September of 2017. It's a few months after the boys in Texas had voted to secede from the Union. And I think that was the first indication that the program was an interesting reflection of what the country was going through, processing. And we thought, when we were going to go down there in 2018, that we might see that same reflection. That was the opportunity to really explore democracy and politics through the eyes of these young people in Texas. And so we knew that there was potential. We really didn't know what we would find. And so really the first challenge was to find the people who we could follow through this experience.
Amanda, did you guys know what kind of characters you were looking for? I know you didn't know specifically that you would run into the four boys that you did, but did you have an idea of who you were looking for?
I mean, yes and no, of course. I think we had 1,100 people to pick from, so it was no small task to find the people we were going to immerse ourselves with wholly for a very long time. And that's only a certain somebody. We've been doing this for a while, and I can't quite pin down like what it is that really makes that person the person for us. But we looked all over Texas for these guys, and it was hard to find them. But I think once they were in front of us, it was very clear for a lot of reasons. They were all super smart, politically savvy, ambitious, big hearts. You know, they had different stories and they had very different politics, which was important to us. So I guess that was one of our mandates, really, was to find a range of life experience and backgrounds. But other than that, no. I think we were hoping we found some great people, and I think we did, but you never know.
How quickly, when you met Stephen and Renee, did you guys know these are going to be main characters in the film?
Well, Renee is the only person we met during the event. We were hoping we would find him, and it wasn't until he stood up to give that extraordinary speech in the film and that we were captivated, and we knew he had to be in this story. Stephen, we knew, I would say, pretty instantly. And what's interesting about meeting Stephen is he was around a table with a group of, I'd say, 10 or 15 other boys who were going to Boy State. They were all
that was an orientation.
Yeah, that was before the program started, and he was not the loudest voice at that table, but he had a quality which I think you discover in the movie, which we recognized, and we didn't think he'd go far because was at the time a Bernie supporter, and we knew this program is really conservative, but we thought he had a lot to say and was ambitious, and we knew he was politically sophisticated for 17. He was already working on political campaigns, so we kind of. Those boys in the film, they really cast themselves. It was very clear that they were special, and that was true of Robert and Ben as well, who we met beforehand. And really, the one question that we asked them in casting that was so important was back to your original question: was we said, what do you think about what's happening in this country now politically?
Huh.
And there was no right or wrong answer to that question, but the response just told us who they were. And I think that's what we wanted to do, was have a conversation about this question through them.
So Stephen, there's a moment early in this film where you're on the bus and a few of the more conservative guys are talking about Trump and Obama, and you've got like a bit of a look on your face, but you don't say much. What was your strategy heading into Boise State? Did you have a strategy? Like you have a progressive background, you get on this bus, there's a lot of people a lot more conservative than you. Like, what were you thinking going in?
It was, knowing that I have to walk a tightrope was just on the back of my mind. And, digressing a bit, I think it's very funny that President Obama did watch the film. And I thought it was funny thinking of him unwinding, wanting to watch a movie. And then there's some 17-year-old kids talking about him on the bus and calling him a neo-socialist and different kinds of things. It makes me laugh every time I think about it. Myself personally, I knew that I had to walk a tightrope of knowing that I do want to win. It would be an honor to win the position of governor. At the same time, I'm in the political and racial minority at this program, and I don't want to lie or change what I believe in order to win. So it's just, how do I reach to this base, this conservative base, as a progressive, as a liberal? And that was really just the entire week for me, is just making sure that I was appealing to their better senses of of working together, of unity, of healing the country in a very divisive time. I think that really resonated with a lot of them, as they're young people and they're seeing what's happening in Washington, and they don't want our country to keep heading in that direction. And so it really resonated with all the people who disagree with me in my political positions on a large number of things, but at the end of the day shared my belief that we have to work together and we have to talk to one another if we're going to get this country out of the current position that it's in.
Renee, you talked in the film about wanting to get outside your liberal bubble of Chicago, which is a much more mature attitude than you see from most people in Washington or everyone on Twitter. What made you want to be around so many people who were different than you and believed such different things?
I think it's not really much so what made me want to be there. It's more like, how did I get in too deep? And the answer is that when I was nominated for Boise State, it was in a passing conversation. Like, I was going to go do something else. My debate coach told me. So I wasn't really in a good mind to receive that information. So I didn't really think about it until, it rolled around. And the only inclination that I had that it was slightly going to be conservative is that on the website, it was decorated to look like it had the wood paneling and taxidermy heads on the side. And I was like, that's really unnecessary for a website. But anyway,
Flag right there.
Right. I was like, it's Texas Boise State. They don't let you know. So I show up. My mother is telling me there's a lot of white people. Doesn't look like you're gonna fit in well. Do you want to go home? And I'm like, yeah, I do. But problem is, she talks really loud. People around me just heard my mom ask me if I want to go home. I wasn't gonna say yes. So then I'm there. And what it really was, it's not that I inherently wanted to step outside my liberal bubble per se, because I don't think anyone willingly wants to do that, especially when they believe that their politics are specifically entwined with their identities, right? Especially when, this day and age, a lot of people's politics becomes life or death. So I was not trying to step outside of that. I think it was partially due to the fact that I had no other choice but to. I was now in a position where I was leading, and I can spend an entire week angry, mad, with the oppression of the republicanism on my shoulders, or I could seek to understand. And I kind of like to apply this to greater society. In the same way, we truly don't have a choice on whether or not we're going to deal with contrary beliefs. We kind of choose our own oppressions. We kind of choose what frustrates us. And I think politics is certainly a forefront that we have yet to address, to depersonalize, in a sense.
Yeah. Amanda, what was the most unexpected storyline or theme that came out of the week?
That's a hard question. That's like, I have lots of, there was a lot of surprises on this film that you hope you're going to be surprised. Honestly, in our line of work, these guys have heard us talk about this before, in nonfiction. I want all my expectations to be subverted. I want to learn something. I want to meet people who change me. I do think I went in with maybe a lack of imagination about what 17-year-old boys are like. And I think that I expected a certain level of Lord of the Flies. And I got some of that. And then you watch through the progression of the week, some amount of order is created, but also that it was so much more emotional than I expected it was going to be. And you certainly know much more about, there is a lot of emotion in politics, and these are roller coasters every time, but this was a fake election. And this was, but I got so involved, and we saw so much genuine emotion between people, very different people. And that was surprising. So that's a very big general answer to your question. There were many specifics. Robert kind of blew me away. I didn't realize he was, had a whole different thing inside than his sort of stage performance. And, there's tons of things. But I was so moved actually by how much these two guys moved people emotionally. And that was very meaningful.
Jesse, what about you? I think I'm pretty naive, so I think I was surprised by how much politics at Boise State did resemble national politics, and how many machinations that you see in national politics were reflected in trying to run this race for governor. But I don't know what you thought about that.
Yeah, I think we hoped for that. I think we were surprised the degree to which this political drama did mirror the national contest and the national dynamics, but it's a big petri dish. It's the advantage of having 1,000 boys, many of whom are really politically sophisticated. And I think that the contest of ideologies that emerged with the Nationalist Party of René and Stephen, and politics of empathy, of listening, of bridge building, versus the Federalist Party and the politics of a kind of a different ideology. Really, you hear Ben invoke military metaphors to talk about winning and strength. It's really a politics of strength. And so there were really that contest, to see that emerge while we were engaged, or in the same contest of ideologies on the national level, was really interesting, but maybe inevitable, given these are forces that are coursing through our country, and of course they're going to come out. We loved how much drama there was in this election. We loved watching Stephen build those bridges, to see that he could do that. That quiet kid at the table who we met at orientation, we didn't know he could give a speech, John, and you see it in the movie. The moment he kind of steps up into that moment and captivates that room. I don't know if Stephen knew he could do that. He was holding that card in his back pocket, but that really blew us away. And to see that not only could he summon that, but he could summon them to his cause.
I was going to ask you about that, Stephen, as someone who's worked on a lot of speeches. Could you talk about the process that led up to that speech that you gave? Because, and I don't know if you're like this all the time, but the way that the film did portray you at the beginning is that it portrayed you as a very quiet kid, not as outgoing. My first thought was, oh, I can't believe he wants to be in politics. And then by the time you give that speech, you've got the whole room just captivated. It was fantastic. What was the process leading up to that?
It was a very interesting experience. I knew in the back of my mind, I said, I just need to get on this ballot. And that was really, really difficult for me to do. I got my last signature maybe 45 minutes before they were due. I thought to myself, okay, as long as you make it on the ballot, as long as you have a chance, you can do it. But like Jesse and Amanda said, I had never really been in that position before. I was very quiet. I was reserved. Like Ben mentioned in the film, I'm not that really rowdy person in there doing backflips. I would break my neck if I tried. but you know, coming from my background, immigrant family, and um, I've always just been proud of being an American, and you know, in my mind as a Democrat, I think sometimes that people think that patriotism belongs to one party, not the other. And I thought that was wrong. You know, I love my country as much as any other person does. I'm able to recognize its faults and its achievements at the same time. And you know, at the time, secession was a big thing going on. It happened the year before. They voted to secede from the Union. And as a person who respected the military, my brother served in the Iraq War. Um, and as somebody who was a student of history, knowing that the awful correlation between secession and slavery was something to me that we wouldn't joke about anything of that nature. So why are we joking about breaking away, especially while all these veterans are here putting on this event for us? And so it was just really, really, near and dear to my heart. And I figured that, man, they're going to boo me after I say this, because I'm the one trying to be more serious than some of the other people who went up and were giving speeches. But to me, I sat down and I just started writing what came to mind. And I even, I was thinking to myself, and I wrote it too, like, man, might cost me this entire thing. But it is important to me to say it. And I'm not going to shrink down from that responsibility I feel to make sure that we're honoring those who served in defense of this country, and whose friends didn't come back, to not joke about something like breaking away and forming our own independent country. So wrote, and I'm not sure how you do, and you've written lots of speeches, and I admire that very much. It's not easy to do for a mock election, and I'm sure it's a lot harder when you're doing it for the president. But
it's hard no matter what.
Yeah, it was difficult to get the words in, and then you're up there, and it's a whole different thing trying to give what you wrote. But it just kind of, in that moment, it just happened, and I'm really glad it did.
Renee, what about your speech for party chair? Because that was a barn burner, and it seemed like you had known what you were going to say for a while. I feel like it came off like you had planned that one for a while. But tell us about the process.
Unfortunately, my best skill, speaking off the cuff. Frankly, I didn't even know if I wanted to run for state party chair. And the film director said that was the first time they met me. I kept a pretty low profile the entire time. Fortunately, there was a very long line of people who were wanting to run, so I had plenty of time to think about, did I want to run or not. And most of that was predicated off of, could I come up with a good speech in the audience by the time the elections ended, and would the people around me vote for me? And so I think I was just hearing some things that people were just saying straight up, just like, demagoguery, just to win, favor. And I was like, that, it's just inaccurate things. And that kind of upset me. And I was like, I really want to go ahead and kind of clear the air a bit. So the speech I wrote was way longer than I performed. I kind of made the last minute decision to go over skip over certain parts, because in my first election, I went over time, didn't even get to go through my entire speech. But yeah, most of that was really the passion of the moment.
What's been happening in both your lives since the film, Stephen?
Yeah, me and Renee are going to college. We're both UT Longhorns. We're both remote UT Longhorns right now. He's in Austin and I'm in Houston right now. Focusing on school and also still working in politics. I'm an intern for a political organization, and like right now I'm like tracking legislation between 3 different states in session, and also tracking the races that are going on there, which is really exciting. Work that I've never been able to do before. But hopefully, using that experience, because this entire ride has kind of led me to decide, or which ride I want to go on in politics. Do I want to be the guy that the guy counts on? And so I've hoped to write more speeches. It's something that I'm working towards to hopefully end up in that position. That feels like something that would be very fulfilling to me. So that's really what I'm trying to do right now in college.
What about you, Renee?
Let's see, life immediately after the documentary. I just went to school, and then COVID happened. Um, and so now I think I've just been rolling with the punches. Um, Not gonna lie, it's been a bit of a rough patch. I'm gonna get a little vulnerable here. I was forced to move out on my own. On income from 3 jobs, none of which survived the pandemic. I just lost my older brother. And it feels like I'm trying to come back to reality right now, especially with school. But nonetheless, my goals have not changed. I, in fact, have a stronger drive, per se. I'm working to start, a union organization with a couple of friends of mine and whatnot, because, being on your own necessitates creativity. And I think doing something that would give back to the community and also provide some sort of sustainability for the people I work with is ultimately the goal. So I just want to dedicate my life to nonprofit work is something I've kind of discovered. And my passion is education. So that's my life since.
That's good. Amanda and Jesse, what made you both hopeful during the course of filming this?
I mean, I'd say, these two inspired us. I think their level of commitment to this process. I think, but all the boys that we focused on, and I don't agree with Ben politically. I didn't have a Ronald Reagan doll on my bookshelf growing up, but I think we really respected and still respect like his commitment to throwing himself into the process. I think that was what this program was a reminder of for us, that democracy isn't a spectator sport. And we chose boys who we knew were going to throw themselves into this program. Not everybody does, but we felt like in that was a hopeful reminder. I think that 17-year-olds can be powerful moral leaders in a program like Boy State, in their communities, like Renee, in activism. I think, and I think that was important. We kind of needed that. I mean, we undertook this film in a dark time. We lived through a dark time, and we were looking for hope and not sure we would find it. And we felt like there has been a real existential threat to democracy. At the time we embarked on the film 3 years ago, there was this sustained assault on the institutions that are underpinning our country, and those assaults have only gotten more extreme. And to be reminded that there are people who are not, gonna sit silently, but throw themselves into the process was something we needed to see, and also to have a conversation about our country and about politics and about democracy that's not about Donald Trump, which this film and these young men allowed us to do, was really important for us. It was healthier in a way to tell this story than that other story that is all-consuming sometimes.
Yeah, it was a nice break to watch a story that wasn't about Donald Trump.
But at the same time, it's about a lot of these dynamics that America's wrestled with from the beginning, right? And I sort of, what I love about the hope that I did find in this space is that it's not without also looking at the problems, the flaws, the intractable differences, the challenges of representational democracy, electoral politics, tribalism, toxic masculinity. It's all in there. And I think part of looking at all of this is it's you have to be active and being, hopeful is an active position. It's not, I just don't want to be naive about that concept, because it's very tricky what we're doing, this big experiment. And I love that was all on display in this space.
Well, there was also a seriousness of purpose that I think came through. And it was very interesting because I think it was Ben in the film says at one point that secession happened the year before, partly because everyone was so punchy and tired and they started passing things and people got silly. And you sort of notice that again this year, that they start sort of passing resolutions that are a little sillier. And it did remind me of sort of the line on the far right now with Trumpism, where some people, they do things that they say is just a joke that you shouldn't take so seriously. And then they end up being more radical. And it's partly just a way of looking at politics that isn't serious. Let's see if I can just troll everyone. And I wondered if you all came away from this maybe a little more hopeful that at least the people at Boise State, whether they were liberal or conservative, approached the job and approached politics with much more of a commitment and seriousness of purpose.
I mean, I think it's really important in this program that they allow the boys to sort of find their way to that serious place. And it took a week, and we weren't sure they would, but and I hope we will as a country. It sometimes feels like we're not. You're right. There are people who just want to blow it up for the sake of causing chaos and mayhem. And to see this organism find its equilibrium or find its purpose was really, that was ultimately hopeful, and that young men of progressive politics, of color, could come to power and be challenged, have Renee's legitimacy challenged. Stephen, to be the victim of dirty tricks. I mean, that we don't need to be reminded of is also a very real threat. But to see these voices come to power in that system, even though we didn't get the Hollywood ending that we wanted, it's still. I mean, Stephen loves that I quote him quoting Napoleon, but I think the sort of struggle and defeat in Napoleon's words. I'm forgetting what it was, but that idea is really. And I know we're not supposed to quote Napoleon anymore, even, right, Stephen? But I think we all found that really inspiring.
Yeah.
That you're still fighting. Yeah. All right, let's take some questions from the audience. I'm going to read some that we've got here. For Renee and Stephen, how important do you feel vulnerability is in a politician? Good question. Stephen, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Great question. And it's something that when I first thought about it, I mean, when this project began, I didn't know what it really was going to become of it. I mean, I didn't know if this was going to end up on Jesse's hard drive in his attic for 30 years, or not knowing that I'd be here speaking with you today. I thought a lot of the fact that there's that scene at the end of the film where, I do get very emotional. And for a long time, I thought about the fact that these strangers are going to be able to see me in this very vulnerable state, and grappling with what that means, if I should be bothered with it, if I shouldn't be bothered with it. And I think that ultimately seeing the reaction that the emotional response to my emotional reaction to what had occurred was very strong. And I thought of, you don't really see that a lot in politics. I mean, I think that people resonate with somebody who shows you that they're, a human with faults. I am not the archetype of a politician. I'm a pretty short guy. I'm not the most athletic person. I don't have a very perfect voice. I sometimes have a lisp in my voice, and things that compared to somebody like my good friend Robert, who is this very tall, handsome football player. You kind of see that, and then but knowing that somebody is I think the fault with some people is holding politicians to be some kind of semi-divine person who is above reproach and isn't allowed to say that they were wrong or that they changed their mind, or that they're a person who has their own beliefs and their own faults. I think people sometimes ask to be, if they want their politicians to be above reproach, and they're asking to be disappointed, because they're all people, and we have highs and lows, and we have problems, and we struggle to overcome those problems. And it's hard when you have the world see you that way. If you're running for office, or if you're in office, you have the people and the press and the people who want to see you fail. It's something that I think we should be more accepting of, somebody admitting to their faults and showing emotion and saying, hey, dudes cry. Yeah, that's the thing. We get emotional, and we love each other and this and that. So sorry for the pretty long ramble about that, but it's just something that I've had to come to terms with. And thinking of that, anybody, that there's been a lot of people who have seen me cry, and just kind of thinking about what that means for me personally.
That was well said. Renee?
Absolutely. I think it's kind of funny how we ask, should politicians be vulnerable? It's like saying, should humans be human? And I think that's absolutely true. I do not believe we are viewing politicians as, actual people. I think it's kind of scary to think that there's that room for human error. And I think vulnerability is, that main mechanism in which we communicate the difference between a strong leader and a civilian. However, we must recognize that this is civilian-led government. And I believe that vulnerability that seeks to normalize the politician is so, so important. Beyond also the other things of what's, not to repeat what Steven said about the importance of looking like a human, but also I'm a big fan of everybody needs therapy. And if somebody running my country doesn't have the wherewithal to get what he or she or they are feeling out, somebody gonna get blown up. You know what I'm saying? Like you just gotta have to take into account the human emotion is important in every circumstance. We want to make sure that our politicians are emotionally healthy as well.
Yeah, I think we just experienced 4 years of what happens when that's not the case.
For real, eat your breakfast, take your vitamins, do your yoga, make sure you got the homeostasis going on before you start making decisions.
How different of an experience do you all think this would have been, and how the film would have been, had it been People State and not Boy State? Amanda and Jesse?
Well, I think Stephen speaks for all of us at the beginning of the movie when he asked that question, like, why not? Shouldn't this be People State? And I think we'd like to make People State. For now, we're going to have to settle for Girl State, which is going to be the sibling. We don't call it a sequel, but we're going to make Girl State because we want to see what this program looks like with young women with very different political views when they get together. Are they going to ban cargo shorts? Or, come to their senses? And we're not going to do it in Texas. But I think, there's something really valuable about Boy State, and I think will be about Girl State, and sort of the window into girlhood or boyhood. And that's what emerged unexpectedly from this film, was seeing these sort of two ways of being a young man, two very different ways, and how that informs how you relate to people, but also what your political identity is. And but I think that bringing everybody together, young people, to have this experiment would be incredibly valuable. And I think these spaces in American life where people with very different backgrounds actually get together in a room and talk to each other, they're very rare. That's what drew us to Texas, to this program. And Boy State, Girl State isn't the only way to find that, I think, in American life, but it does seem like, the public school classroom is one, but those are pretty geographically specific. And so where are those spaces? We need more of them, I think, as we're increasingly siloed in our lives. So.
Amanda, would you guys be interested in maybe doing another film about Girl State?
Oh, we're in development.
Oh, excellent.
With that. And it's really interesting how some of the dynamics that exist in Boy State will exist in Girl State, like, kids coming from urban places and rural places and meeting for the first time. That is a dynamic in two of the states that we're investigating right now very vividly. And I think that dynamic will be interesting. But I'm sure there'll be a lot that's really different. And again, I really hope I'm surprised in all of the expectations I'm bringing with me. And I'm sure I will be. And I can't wait to meet 4 ladies that we're going to immerse ourselves with. So to be continued.
That's great. Stephen and Renee, I'm going to ask you a question from the audience that is probably the most asked question to us whenever we do Pod Save America live shows. Do you guys have advice for people who have family or friends that have different political alignments than theirs, especially progressive or liberal people encountering more conservative people?
Renee, you go for it.
Um, hmm. So this is going to come just a lot of my different philosophies that I've learned in trying to encounter, just going in my life encountering people with different views. Um, I think a good start is to understand that people's political views do not come from their own volition. No matter what I tell you, I do not believe what I believe because I chose to. It's really not that. It's because of the environment I was raised around, and how that kind of frames my way of thinking. So there's that. Second, someone always has to be the bigger person. Okay. And so that means someone has to do a lot of forgiving. And that's the first step. You have to teach someone how to encounter you. You have to teach someone how to like speak to you. And if you teach someone with a different viewpoint than you, just speak to you with respect, that's leagues of power to you. So, be sure to explain, not to change, explain only to understand, seek only to understand. Because otherwise you'll give yourself some impossible standards, you burn yourself out, and then you don't want to hang around that person no more.
Great.
It's it's a very difficult question to answer. Luckily, I don't have that grandpa who watches like Fox News and stuff like that, or like Tucker Carlson at night or anything like that. So I never really had to experience it in my life. I have a little brother, and I say he's little, but he's 18, and he, is, he doesn't agree that I call him that, but he's a conservative person, or, would vote straight Republican, if you voted. And I think it's very funny because, when me and him got interested in politics in 2015, as both fans of Bernie Sanders, and then after Bernie Sanders lost the primary in 2016, me and him went two different directions with how to deal with the fallout of that. And I, decided to kind of devote myself to more progressive candidates and causes, and he kind of turned to that more, conservative Republican candidates who, kind of, his belief that, us versus, Wall Street, or the elites versus, like, I saw it as, he saw it as like against the liberal elite kind of thing. And we've had our arguments, and they're they're very heated sometimes of us disagreeing. And I mean, now that we're in court, we've been stuck at home for a year. I mean, like, what else is there to do besides argue? But I think, realizing at the end of the day, he's very smart, and he doesn't have his views because he regurgitates them. I mean, he sometimes beats me in an argument, admittedly, and he doesn't know that, and hopefully he'll never see this, but he does. And sometimes I get the better of him. But realizing at the end of the day, he's still my brother, and ultimately, he thinks that what he's doing is in the best interest, or what he believes in is in the best interest. I mean, there's so many things that we also agree on, and because he's my brother, obviously I'm not gonna cut him out of my life, because there's so many things that we both agree on. Like, we don't don't necessarily like Wall Street. We kind of, we'd like government to run better than it currently does. We don't want to be engulfed in a second civil war. Those seem like bare minimums, of course, but really it is just kind of, like Renee said, knowing that, we're both not, instead of trying to fight each other or seeking to understand, like in Boy State, I could have been the most combative person there and, yelled at all these, anti-abortion, anti-immigrant people. But, as long as I'm in this space, why do you think what you think? Why do you believe what you believe? You don't live anywhere near the border. You're from Amarillo, Texas. What are you scared about? I was born in the Valley. I grew up down there. My parents come from there. They're not, MS-13. They're good people. Why do you think what you think? And can I help change it? And if I can't, then I'm sorry for you, but there's someone else out there that I can. So.
Amanda, Jesse, thank you so much for making this wonderful film. Stephen and Renee, thank you for participating, and thank you for being involved in politics and public service. And I can't wait to see what both of you guys do. Thank you.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, John, for leading the conversation. And thank you, Amanda and Jesse and Stephen and Renee for being with us tonight. I'd like to thank the audience for zooming in and remind you that you can watch Boy State on our website, americancinematheque.com, and on Apple TV. Make sure you watch it if you haven't done it yet.